Imagine being the go-to team for every strategic decision your company makes. Being too focused on tech and tools could mean your RevOps team isn't making the strategic impact it should be. In this episode, we'll show you how to position RevOps as a key player in shaping the future of your business, taking your role from tactical to visionary. I'm curious, how do you guys think RevOps can break out of the operational box and become a real strategic driver in the organization? Olga, we'll start with you.
Sure. And you're right, RevOps brings a lot of data to the table, but is that enough to impact, strategic decisions and get that seat at the executive table? To move beyond just data and the reports, we need to focus on a few key strategies. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna say that trigger word, the H word, handoff. I think that's one of the major components that we need to think about. How do we enable the seamless handoff between the teams or transition, or transition between the teams? Right, that is one of the most significant friction points that I've been noticing between marketing and sales and customer success and other teams involved. And it comes down to figuring out the process and really have your process buttoned up throughout the entire customer journey. The process has to be also supported with data and by data. And so that's how user would expand.
You are preaching to the choir here. I see you shaking your head there, Greg. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so data, it's really hard in RevOps where there's a strategic side and a tactical side. And we all know that the tactical side always wins out. When there's a fire in the kitchen, you put it out. Mm-hmm. And so the way that RevOps really elevates itself within the organization is you plan to not have the fires, right? Putting out a fire with your hands is a lot harder than putting out with a fire extinguisher. So having those protocols in place helps you be more strategic. And I know Olga kind of said, not just focus on the data. I think data is like the table stakes. Mm-hmm. If you want to be an expert at something, you have to know it inside and out, and you get that through the data. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest mistakes I see RevOps professionals making is when they're asked to provide something, they provide the data. Mm-hmm. And you take your CEO or your CRO, here's the data for the board report, and you say, you're welcome. Rather than saying, you've went and got the data and hey, here's 4 suggestions that I came up with, yep, or here's how I think we can attack this problem. When you bring that to the table, then you get a seat at the table.
Story, right? What we discussed yesterday, being able to drive context from the data and provide recommendations and come up with the story.
That's the number one thing I get, right? The so what? You give me a 127-page deck. I don't know what the hell to do with it. What action am I supposed to take now? You're absolutely right. Deciphering that and actually making it actionable and boiling that report down into just the most tactical points, I think is fantastic. And exactly as you said, it gets you so much more strategic. Something else that I've done. So in addition to the process side of this and the process, the data side of this, I think it's also trying to figure out what's in it for me as you think about your stakeholders. Something that I've done and continue to do is really looking at business capabilities. What capabilities are we providing to each of our stakeholder groups? What's important to marketing, lead management, lead generation, lead routing? What's important to sales, opportunity management, accuracy of data, conversion, et cetera? What's important to customer success? So kind of taking the process and the data as a foundation to be able to figure out what's working and what's not working, but also using that to be really thoughtful around how mature those different capabilities are, and then using that as a burning platform to then prioritize and also show the value that you're delivering to each of those organizations, while at the same time advancing what you're trying to accomplish from a revenue perspective as well.
I think it comes down to clear communication, right? So and we've been talking about silos, right? I mean, it's kind of one of those words that, and there's even a whole show called The Silo. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's a little bit, it's a little bit anyway, watch it if you haven't. But it becomes an element of communication and understanding. You said it, what's in it for me? Like, what problem do they have, your different stakeholders asking the question, what problem are you trying to solve? I mean, it's like sales. A lot of us came from sales. We teach sales. And so we have to become internal salespeople with our stakeholders and really drive that communication. Otherwise, you become the deck creator and the help desk and the fixer and the problem solver and all these things. And while that might be a very small part of the job, or a part of the job, not small part, it's if you really want to elevate, you have to take that communication to the next level. And really, I don't think you can break down silos, because I think people are silos in their own fiefdoms and egos and everything we've talked about before. But it's really just understanding, how can I help you?
Yep.
How can I partner with you?
Yeah.
How can I provide you the data that you need to accomplish what you want to accomplish in the organization?
Oh my gosh. Go read How to Win Friends and Influence.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, that's step one.
Yeah.
Because if you can go and take the people that are making decisions above you and make them shine.
Yeah.
Like, make them fix their problems for them, make them shine, make them know. And if they don't reciprocate that down, and I'm not saying like tit for tat, like, hey, I get a promotion.
Yeah.
But if they don't then give you some credit, hey, go look for another job.
Right.
Because those leaders, like, yes, they did a lot to get there too. Yeah. But when you do that for them and you make them shine, you get them promotions, you get them bonuses, things like that, that should be reciprocated down in recognition and respect and a seat at the table in the future.
Yeah, a mutual
Right.
respect, and I think there's top-down communication as well that's required, and bottom-up. So I think you have to have really both throughout this whole process if you really want to elevate the role of RevOps.
Prioritizing insights, right, over metrics, and that's how you help those people shine, that bring in so what and what's next with those metrics. And since we've been mentioning board decks, I feel like several times here today, I would argue like this is a trigger point for me. Who do you guys think should be responsible for the board deck at a company? In my previous lives, my previous companies, I was responsible. I was putting together board decks as a head of RevOps. My current company, finances, is responsible for that. And I like it not just because I don't have to do it, but because it really brings in that alignment.
Yeah.
Finance, at the end of the day, owns the number, right? And there's so much argument, ARR, ACV, closed one, all of those things, right? And that sort of brings down the silos and removes all the friction between like us fighting last minute, 11th hour over the board, just having that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of finance people just like had their heart skip a beat. I own the number, right?
I'm just gonna put it there.
Yeah.
Oh, we're reporting it.
Yeah. No, we've had a lot of different variations of that between myself, finance, the CRO, everything. I have found the most success when there's actually a committee running it. And so you have certain people putting input. Usually it's either a RevOps or a finance role that's pulling it all together.
Yep.
The thing that I've loved, I've had a couple organizations where we've actually had an automated board report. There's some tools out there that will take you can set up your template and you can have it pull in data from your KPIs. And then you get to then go in and add the story. So all the data input is put into the same template every quarter. So the board loves it. This is
So you don't need to spend time on coloring your bar chart.
no.
You mean then like the CEO and CRO and CFO can't download their own PowerPoint versions and then drop a bunch of multiple versions into an email?
And this is actually, and this was actually brought to us by our VC company. They actually paid for this software for all of their portfolio companies for a year. They get you hooked on it, right?
Yeah.
Mandate it, and then you buy it the rest of the
I
time.
learned something too.
But
Yeah.
it's that type of just standardization of the board deck, and it's coming from the board. It's
Right.
coming from the VC, so you know that you don't have to because let's be honest, we love the 24 hours before the board meeting. Hey, here's 17
Lord.
questions that you need to answer in the next 30 minutes or I'm going to lose my job.
Right.
And you're like, well, when did you get these? And sometimes it really is like, I got them 2 minutes ago.
Right.
And that's the type of stuff that I think makes the board report just chaotic and stressful is when it changes. And we can be responsible for that, but sometimes it's the board also. They're asking questions that they should have asked a month ago.
Yeah.
And it just leads to a poor board meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a difference between responsibility for the deck, like the actual, but what content is driving the deck,
Right.
who's responsible for that? Because I think sometimes RevOps is like the default, administrator. So they're running the decks, but sometimes the input is coming, different from different areas and things like that. So
Yeah.
I love this idea of having a
DM me on LinkedIn
to do it, for sure.
and I'll send you the name of the tool and get you hosed up. It was an absolute game changer, and I try to introduce it to every company that I work with. I at least tell them about it. And it's expensive, but it helps in so many ways. And so if you're ready for it, it's an amazing game changer.
Nice.
Wow. For this next segment of the show, we do a quick discussion about some interesting data that the Sweetfish team tracked down behind the scenes. Today, we're talking about a stat that comes from the Revenue Operations Alliance's 2023 State of Revenue Operations report. That report shows that 44% of RevOps pros say problem solving is the most important skill for the role, followed by data analysis at 17.1% and communication at 14.6%. So I'm curious, Greg, what's your reaction to that data?
I disagree with it. And I know it's surveyed. How do you disagree with survey? I would flip this completely. I think that communication is the most important skill in RevOps, hands down, because there's a lot of very technically savvy RevOps operators that can solve all the problems. There's a lot that they can do the data analysis, and it's really clean and crisp. There are not a lot that can turn that into a story that is impactful, that they can communicate that both up and down in the organization to drive change. And I think that RevOps is in a unique role in the organization where we interface with sales, marketing, customer success, partnerships, finance. You have to interface with people of very different personalities, very different levels, C-suite down to individual contributors. Until you master communication and the people aspect of RevOps, your problem solving and data analysis is not going to be considered as valuable.
Right.
Yeah. 100% agree. Communication. I mean, honestly, you can solve any problem if you can't tell the story. Who cares, right? Some people are going to notice who are directly impacted, but the large audience is not going to get it at all. I do think problem solving is critical. And we had talked earlier around what do you look for in a successful RevOps professional. I think that's very much something that's important too. But without communication, again, that goes nowhere. The thing that actually surprised me on this list was empathy was so far down. I was actually really surprised. I thought that would be one of the, after problem solving and communication, I thought those three were so powerful. Was really surprised to see empathy not up there. Because again, as we were talking about in previous episodes, if you can't be in the shoes of your sales partner, your marketing partner, your CS partner, you're not going to understand their job. You're not going to have the right level of priorities, and you're not going to have the right level of fire to really understand what to go after as a RevOps leader.
I would roll empathy under communication skills, right? Back to our RevOps therapy. I feel like we should trademark this.
Yes. Agree.
But that's the trifecta. I agree. Communications, data analysis, problem solving, and that's at the same time being agile, and being able to move quickly. Really, a lot comes into that. I would agree. Communication, but then communication expands into like driving the context out of data. It means that you have to first get the data, analyze the data, report on the output, look at it, and figure out what's in it for me, and then what's in it for CMO, CFO, CSO,
Right.
Yeah.
and drive the message to serve to each and every one of them, and work with them together. One cannot do without the other. Like,
Yeah.
it has to be connected back to our discussion about this hybrid RevOps role. It's not just understanding the customer journey, but also having the skill set and being like really, unicorn and, and managing, massaging your data, driving insights out of it, communicating those insights and taking next steps, because there's always going to be a next step out of it. And
Right.
you're going to be responsible for taking it on and delivering it.
And I think communication has to be intentional. So I've learned the hard way and continue to learn that just because you send an email out doesn't mean someone actually read it. Just because you did a training. So just, having this constant ability to be a proactive communicator, utilizing different tools, multi-channel. Again, this goes back into how would you prospect, right? Internally, you need to reach people, in a multi-channel way. So if you have a chat group, you're sending it there. So for example, when we make a process change, I'll make a quick little 2-minute video. I'll do it myself, do a little screen share, drop it in the chat. And then I'm going to have an email that might go up, above, up to the, upper leadership. If it's something that requires communication to cross-functional, we'll do that as well. I might be a guest in somebody else's team meeting in order to do it, have it posted. So you have to hit them in multiple ways. People don't check their emails.
Right.
I mean, how many unread emails does everybody have? I mean, I'm always trying to get those down, and I know salespeople are just deleting half of them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a safe assumption,
You
truly.
can't just check the box and think that you communicated. So I think it has to be intentional. So you have, just your normal communication of whatever your strategy is. And even that's a multi-touch. Like I've been known to literally make videos just for the C-suite, just explaining to them because I'm hoping that they will open the link from their phone and watch it. And then of course, I know if they're watching it because I can see, right?
Track it. Yeah.
Yes. But those are really critical things I think to think about. So I'd argue with this data, like communication should be right at the top. So I'm with you, Greg, on that.
Yeah.
And over communicate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You mentioned your emails. I kind of laughed because I've had sales reps unsubscribe from the sales at company email. And you were like, wait, what?
It's not an option.
Like are you quitting or what? What is that? Like the quiet quit? I'm just not gonna take any of the emails.
That's awesome. Do you have 2 minutes between analyzing your quarterly forecast and negotiating bedtime with your 3-year-old? We would love it if you went to revopscircle.com/survey and answered 5 quick questions for us. We try to send out something fun once a month to one lucky survey taker to make it worth your while. All right, back to it.
The problem solving and the data analysis in the ROA report is still critical in the fact that if you're communicating and you don't know what you don't have the solution, you lose all credibility.
Yeah.
And so really RevOps is one of the roles in a company that it requires more of you. It requires, you can't just be like in sales, you got the guy that's just like laser focused. I'm going to go close deals. Don't bother me. Don't ask me to come to meetings. We love that guy because he pays everybody's bills.
Right.
In RevOps, there's not really this like, hey, I'm going to be just the guy that communicates to everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
I have to be able to solve problems. I have to be able to do the data analysis, right? I don't need someone that is just going to do data analysis.
We don't have the luxury to
Right.
practice one thing.
Right.
You can't.
And that's how we elevate going back to the kind of the topic of the show today is that's how we elevate the role of RevOps is we get rid of the stigma of you're a data analyst, you're a data scientist. Oh, you're enablement.
I heard IT. I heard RevOps is like go-to-market IT.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And they were trying to like send us tickets.
Yeah, the help desk, right? And I always try to look back at, okay, so if people are asking me all of the time for requests or they're having challenges and I need to go back to why am I turning into the help desk and what are the consistent things that they're complaining about to kind of get out of that space, because I think it is the de facto help desk in a lot of cases, especially if you own Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever your CRM, if that's part of your
Gain center.
I mean it's you have to fix the problems, right? If there are problems, but making sure that again, it goes back to communication, but making sure that you have your process in place and it's aligned with your systems and there's a good user experience. So if I'm seeing a rise in problems or requests coming in, and I do have a ticket because there's only 2 of us, so we have to like prioritize and organize. I can't be grabbing stuff from a chat and from an email and stuff like that, but we try to see patterns. If we're getting the same thing coming in, it's probably because there's a problem, something's broken, we didn't do something well, a calculation's not working, you know, the spinning thing is happening. Well, we need to address the root cause and understand what that is and elevate us out of becoming the help desk in that way, because otherwise you're just always reacting to stuff.
Yeah.
And you turn yourself into help desk when you do not bring insights, you do not bring so what's. That of course people start looking at you as just data spitter, you know, system fixer, and IT. No offense to IT, IT is great, but just IT, right? So we need to take that proactive step forward.
Yeah, because immediately you force yourself and your team back into being a tactical and a reactive team. That's not the point of revenue operations.
Right.
You never should have stood up a RevOps team. Is that if that what your goal is going to be? Well, that's how the team actually plays out.
Yeah, so I'll share a story, and this is from a company that I was at probably 5-7 years ago, and we were a translation software company. We sold technology, a recurring SaaS product, but also the actual service of translation. Translation service is a commodity, pay per word. Yeah, everybody can get the same translators, and you do about the same price. Whereas our software was where we had huge margins, made a lot of money on it. But we would come to these companies and we just kind of hit a plateau where we could charge $100,000 a year to these big companies for this technology, but not really more. But they would start translating a lot more words and a lot more words and a lot more words, and it cost us AWS cost and things like that. And so we're trying to figure out how do we grow, how do we scale, how do we keep going with this business, because it's either gonna not be scalable or we're gonna figure this out. And so I had been there for probably 4 years, and I had established some credibility. And so I actually partnered with our head of product, and we tried to figure out how do we monetize this product. We never agreed. Me and this guy in the executive meetings, it was always us like, no, that's not going to work. And sales needs to do this, and the product needs to do this. And it just wasn't like we didn't like each other, but we just didn't see eye to eye. And I remember one night we were working on something. We said, well, what if we just scour the data and figure out how we can change the formula and just add the technology fee onto the words. And at first I was like, that'll never work, right? It's not scalable, it'll never work. But we dove into the data, we did the background homework, and then we came to the table and we had 5 years of data where these numbers just kept going up. We decided, and I'm glad our board agreed to it, but we decided to take away our SaaS offering, which is like the absolute kiss of death for a software company.
Right.
Recurring revenue, contracts out in advance, everything. So we took that away, and we went to our clients and said, okay, instead of paying $100,000 up front, we're going to add half a penny per word. We're going to add 1/10 of a penny per word. And we kind of had a scale of what the technology, and instead of selling modular technology, oh, this is going to cost you another 20 grand, this, that, CFOs hated that. We just said, hey, it's going to cost you between, 1/10 of a penny to a half a penny per word translated, and you get to decide that. And we banked on our customers needing that translation to keep going. And so all of a sudden, a company that had a problem paying $100,000 a year in software services, but was translating $1 billion a word, or 1 billion words a year, was happy to pay, 2/10 of a penny. And it's just tacked on there, and they didn't even know 2/10 of a penny.
Right.
Right.
But then all of a sudden we were getting $250,000 a year in technology fees from them on the back. And I never thought that would have worked. But doing the data, doing the research, and then going confidently to the board saying, I know you think this is crazy, but we've done the background work. We've done the research. We have a solution to something that we've been trying to solve for a year, and you guys don't have anything. So and we went all in, and we said we looked at the CEO, the founder of the company, and we all bought in, and we moved forward. And then within a year we got acquired, and we were on that upscale. And so it was just really cool of like that success story of we did the data, we found it, we made the suggestion, we were confident with it, and it ended up working, and it changed lives. It was a really cool experience.
Great for you, but think about the ops teams, the analytics teams on that side. They didn't do their homework almost.
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
yet they compared two different options? So you guys, as RevOps people, always compare when a vendor comes to you with a platform fee and all-in-one, and then some other different options. Like, calculate and map it to your use case. Don't overpay. I see vendors upselling us a lot of things that we might not need and won't need. There's always a way to buy something during the term of the contract, right? As we protect our budgets, and especially now do more with less, budget cuts, and etc., like, be laser focused on what exactly you're paying for. That's a good story, but I feel for the guys on the other side.
Well, so if you get in deeper to it, a lot of companies, when they buy translation, they have to buy in bulk. And so if you buy 1 billion words and only use 250,000 of that, you're out, and they don't renew. And so the hardest part with CFOs was the guesswork of, we're going to pay this $100,000 in hopes that we do this, but we might not. And that's a risk for them, where we took all the risk out. Like, if you translate it, you pay for it.
Right.
But we were taking the risk of, like, we had no predictable revenue. Like, you're completely moving off the SaaS model, no predictable revenue. But CFOs actually loved it. They understood. And what you could do is you could plan it out. If you knew you were going to do that many, you got a great economies of scale that would right size it. But if you were just going as you went, then you paid that half a penny. So it benefited people that knew what they were doing, and they could still get that same price. But the ones that were just like ad hoc, oh, hey, we have this other project, this other project.
It'll work.
And so we found that happy medium, because when we were talking to our biggest clients, they said the same thing. We said, okay, now let's show you how to maximize this. You just have to pay in advance and pay for bulk, and you get the better deal. So
that's why I love RevOps, because there's so many angles to it, right? We talked about career pathing, the hot topics for 2025, nightmare story, data, right? There's so many angles to it. It's just a never-ending topic.
Well, and that's how you get your seat at the table, right? So, Greg, that story, you really knew the business, right? So very, very much into the weeds of the business, understand the business, and be able to bring those insights forward. And, if you want a seat at the table, you really have to create the seat at the table, because nobody's going to be like, oh, come on in. And we're going to listen to you. So having that credibility and bringing real insights and pushing, right? So, because I'm sure people didn't want to listen to you at first when you said, hey, I figured this out, right?
everybody wants to listen.
I don't know, maybe just when you walk in a room, right?
I had to earn that over 4 years. I didn't walk in the first day and say, hey, you guys, the pricing schedule's messed up. But yes, you have to convince people.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. And it's interesting, as you get this type of value out of revenue operations, it really is a call to action to other organizations who have revenue operations in practice. If you're not getting these types of examples of things that we're sharing from our experiences, you should be. You should be pushing, and you should be partnering with your RevOps professionals to do exactly this type of work. If it's being done elsewhere in the organization and you have a RevOps function, you should ask yourself why. And you, as a RevOps leader and owning a RevOps team, you should be challenging yourself and your team to be able to do exactly this type of analysis. And so that's where the value comes from. If you're investing the time and the effort and having a team, get the most out of it.
Continuous improvement, right? Kaizen, I learned early on.
Absolutely.
And yes. And I really love what we've talked about today, particularly around the collaboration and the communication, understanding, other people's needs, and just kind of, treating it as a consultative business, really, is what we're doing. And in order to really, get your seat at the table, you have to earn it. You have to understand the business. And, for folks that are not in RevOps, it's like, hey, we're not here to take anything away from you, right? It's not, and I know in some companies it becomes a political game or whatever, but really here to drive revenue, here to build scalable processes and work together. And it's never going to be perfect, but if we can focus on that communication, that collaboration, and deriving the data insights, it can really help to drive smart business decisions. Until then, keep your brain sharp and your circles wide. We're out.